Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. So this is our next project. This is in 1974. Who would have guessed it? 1974 Honda ATC 70. Needs a little bit of work. We're going to go through it. We're going to decide what work we're going to do. This is one of the missing pieces to my 1974 Mini collection. And aside from the XL70, which I don't have yet, this is the next one to go. So we're going to take a quick look at it, see what's good, what's not, and then really determine how far we want to go with this thing. So let's see what we have. All right, so looking at this bike, which I've had for about a year now, there's a mix of good things and bad things. The number one good thing, I found a reasonable seller. These are hard to get. Now, I'm in New York, and trying to find a 74 or a 73 is next to impossible here. Now, I needed the 74, and I looked for a long time. And the problem is you find these things in terrible condition, and the sellers go one way or the other. If you get really lucky, you might stumble on one of these things and pick it up for $100 or a couple of $100. Those are few and far between. Then you've got the other side of the equation where somebody will have one in this kind of condition and think it's worth $4,000 or $5,000, which is insanity. This seller was reasonable. Did not spend a lot of money, definitely got the value that I think. We're gonna have to put a couple of bucks into it, but the good, it's got reproduction plastic fenders all the way around in great shape. It's got what appears to be a brand new repo tank, which is in wonderful condition. It's got the original grips, the original handlebars, the original back brake cable, the original, I don't know if this is the throttle cable, I guess. I think that's the throttle cable, original. Somebody replaced this starter wire or the kill switch wire. Then when we start to look at the not so good, I don't know what this seat is off of, but it's not off this bike. So we're either gonna toss that or put it on eBay. Engine looks good. Engine is all there for the most part. You can see, didn't have a pull starter, but I picked up one of those and the pieces that I need to put it together. It's got the original air cleaner on it, still has some of the original decals. Wiring looks a little bit off. We're gonna have to take a look at that. The tires are the original SP Wamulas tires. Dry rotted, sadly, they won't hold air. At least I don't think so. The front, I can stick my finger in it, so I know it's not gonna hold air. So sadly, I think those are gonna have to go. The rims look like they've been repainted a couple of times. But for the most part, this is a pretty solid bike. All right, so here's the bike from the other side. As you can see, it's in pretty good, it looks like it's in pretty good condition. Got the original correct carburetor and airbox. Got a broken bolt over here, not the end of the world. There's a spark plug in it, and I can basically turn it over. So we've got next to no compression there, but I'm not the least bit surprised. Here's those original Hatsu, or however you pronounce that, SP Wamulas tire. These are the coolest things. You can see those rims need a little bit of work. It's got the guard on the back, and it's not too bad. Brakes there in place, and it's got the chrome grab bar. So for the most part, it's a decent bike. Let's get the tank off, get the seat off of there, and that engine is gonna have to come out. A couple other interesting things. Foot peg rubbers, original, I'll replace. They're missing the little guard. Gonna have to find that. I'm gonna suspect when I get into this engine that it's got a different stator. So I've never seen this before, the plug with a cover on it. And none of these wires, which two of which are probably for a lighting coil. This obviously goes nowhere. There's only one connected, which feeds back up to the coil. So I'm curious if we turn this thing over, if it's got any spark. In fact, I may just go through the exercise of pulling that plug, turning this thing over with a drill. Let's see whether or not we got any spark, because that wiring is pretty foreign to me. All right, so I have no spark. I used a drill, I spun it in the right direction, I put a spark plug in here, known good plug, and I have nothing. I'm skeptical of that wiring, I'm skeptical of this connection, and who knows what we're gonna find underneath that flywheel. For the record, that spark plug boot came apart in my hands. I had to fish this out with an O-ring pick. So that is gonna have to be redone at some point, but I think my problem of no spark goes beyond that. Next thing I noticed is it looks like this cover is only held on by one bolt at the moment. So somebody's been in here fooling around. Let's take that one bolt off and look inside before we pull the engine out. All right, so here's the cover off the bike. It's in good condition. Just the one bolt was holding it in. What's left of the old gasket and the rubber pieces are there. Looks like it's got an oil leak or had an oil leak at some point in time. This was interesting. This one bolt, I couldn't get a regular 10mm socket on. I had to use this one, which is a 1/4-inch drive deep socket. You can see it's ground down, and it's ground down because I've got a 73 CB750, 3,000 mile original bike. Someday I'll do a video on that. And I had to take the engine apart because the base gasket was leaking when I got it. It had been sitting for 40 years. And there's a nut inside that engine that you can't get a socket on. So of course I made my own, and it came in handy here, but I'm gonna have to take a look at that. So I took the shifter off the bike, and man, it's got this crazy hook to it. I can't tell if that's supposed to be that way or not. I'm gonna have to take a look. And here we are with that cover off. So definitely gonna say I've got a counter shaft seal leak, big surprise. Looks like the shifter shaft oil seal is relatively new, but if we're gonna get into this, we're gonna replace all of these seals anyway. Chain is gonna go in the garbage. The tensioner has been welded on. That's gonna be fun. Let's just quickly see if we can pop that flywheel off and get a look underneath there. So one of the good things about working on these bikes all the time is I have a flywheel puller, a Z50 flywheel puller that fits. I'm gonna guess this is gonna pop right off of there because I think somebody's been fooling with it, but let's find out. Look at that. That is about as easy as it ever gets. All right, so with the flywheel off, we've got what looks like a reasonably new set of points. Looks like we've got an oil leak behind the stator plate. I'm guessing that's the condenser, although I'm not sure what this is up there. Also looks like a condenser, so we're gonna have to take a look at that. But for the most part, no surprises yet, other than I obviously need some missing piece of the wiring harness. So this is certainly not something I have to do now, but the starter, it's got a bunch of slack in it. Seems to be working. This is something I learned from watching this old trike on YouTube. And if you haven't seen that channel, Preston is the guy who runs it. He's got a lot of great content and some fantastic machines. So watching one of his videos, you turn your inner piece until that slot lines up with where the rope comes in. And then use an O-ring pick, grab yourself some rope and put it in that, tuck it in that slot. And once you have it tucked in that slot, you can crank it forward. Get in there. You can crank it forward and reset the tension. Of course, this is only the second one of these I've ever done this on. And this is pretty tight, so I'm just gonna give this maybe 2 turns. And then undo it, let it back. No more slack. Preston, I've never met you, dude, but thank you. That's a great tip. Okay, a couple of quick things. There are only 2 bolts holding the foot pegs on, so I'm gonna guess when we get under there, we're gonna find something stripped. I started to remove the exhaust. One stud came out, just the whole stud came out. The other one broke, no big surprise. After all of those years, some of these fasteners are shot, so we'll deal with that when we get the engine out. And at this point, there's really only 2 bolts holding the engine in. Let's see if we can get that sucker out of there. All right, so we took off the air cleaner boot to give us a little bit of room there. That boot is going to probably need to be replaced. The engine bolts are out, and the engine is just hanging here at the moment because the exhaust pipe doesn't want to come out. So went around the back, took off the cover plate, took off the one bolt in there. We're going to stand this thing up on its tail and see what we can do about getting that engine out of there. All right, here we are with the bike standing up on my lift. So it looks like this is really all that's holding the engine right now. That's a little bit kind of rusted in there. I'm thinking a couple of taps and that's going to come out. There's a couple of more bolts that hold in the exhaust system, but I'm guessing that's going to fight me too. So I just want to see if I can tap on this, loosen it up, and just get that engine out of there. That would be a good first step here. You gotta love how these things go. So that exhaust is pretty stuck in there. I took the bolts out on the bottom, and now the engine is pretty wobbly. However, the front wheel and the fender are getting in the way. So I'm gonna take that off, and then hopefully we can get the engine out and on the bench. I tell you, you gotta love working on these old bikes. So the axle doesn't wanna come out of there. The bolts holding on that reproduction front fender were really only finger tight. When I got it off, the washers are still taped to the bottom of it. So now let's see if we can get the engine out. So looking at the exhaust from the back, it won't come out from the front because that bracket hits that bar. So I'm wasting my time there. So I put the bike back down, fooled with it, got the engine to drop a little bit, and then finally whacked the exhaust using a piece of wood. The two retainers are what had it stuck in there, and at that point, the engine is finally free to come out. All right, guys, so here's the engine on the bench. You can see it actually is an ATC 70 engine, so that's good. And I'm going to check that serial number. Hopefully it's the right engine for the bike. Like I said, I got a broken stud here. I'm not worried about that. I've got one on the exhaust. These other nuts, top end, right, valve cover stuff, doesn't look like it's ever been fooled with. The screws aren't all wallowed out. I don't think anybody's has ever been in there. The seals looks like they've been replaced at some point in time, but we're just gonna go ahead and rebuild this engine. I mean, I came into this expecting to do that, so that's what we're gonna do. And the beauty of it is, these things are really simple. Once you've done a couple, you could almost do it blindfolded. They're relatively straightforward, and parts are inexpensive and available. Okay, so with the engine out of there, still got a couple of mysteries. Number one, why can't I get the front axle out? I'm gonna have to unstick that. How does that exhaust come out of there? I've got no clue. I gotta get these wheels off, get the fenders off. The frame itself is not in bad shape. Remember, this bike will soon be 50 years old, as it's New Year's Eve as I'm filming this. Happy New Year, everybody, although I'm probably gonna post it tomorrow. I'm gonna guess that I'm gonna end up painting the frame and the forks, just a guess. And you know, there's other things I'm gonna have to do. So for the most part, this is exactly what I expected it to be. If you buy a 50-year-old Honda mini bike, even though these things are made with the highest quality, just remember, this thing probably spent 40 years of its life, 30 years of its life getting beat up by a little kid. I mean, I can't imagine. I never had one of these when I was a kid, but I can't imagine what I would have done if I did have one. I had the bigger ones later on, but these things have had a tough life. So broken bolt here or there, something rusty, something stuck, that is par for the course. And like I said, these engines are ridiculously bulletproof. That thing is going to run like a top when we're done, and it's not going to take a lot of work. So the next episode, we'll probably get the rest of this apart. We're going to make a decision in terms of what exactly we're going to do. We'll crack into that engine, and until then, guys, thank you for watching. Recently hit 1,000 subscribers. Whew! Never thought I'd see the day that that happened, so thanks again for watching. If you're not subscribed, I'd appreciate it if you do. Give me a like and leave me some comments in the comments section below. A lot of you guys know a lot more about these things than I do. Again, big Honda guy, but really new to the three-wheeler scene. So looking forward to working together and getting this one done.